You know what, it's funny, at a recent IT conference a year ago, NASSCOM in India, I was asked this question in a different context, and I was asked, will technology save the world? I have to tell you, despite all technological leaps, you know who saves the world? It's poets. It's poets who still save the world. It's people who get out on campuses and protest. You talked about protests, marches, the Vice President urged you on. I was a student in the US when the biggest protest marches started against investment in South Africa, the anti-apartheid movement. And the Harvard endowment was the target of this because they were major investors. And I watched as we were young people and we were protesting, and that made the difference. I mean, there's no analogy there. All I'm trying to tell you is, yes, technology is an enabler. It's a facilitator. That's why we've invested in electric cars. When we did that some years ago, people were wondering why we're doing it. It's not going to make money. It's stupid. I don't think we are being called stupid anymore. We're still not making money on it, but we are not being called stupid anymore. We are called visionary. So we are making a bet on technology. But at the end of the day, thank God for your system, Vice President, in America of liberal arts. Because the liberal arts are the ones that generate the poets who will make the protests, who will call out the scenarios and force us to change direction. Technology is an enabler.
Right, but Mr. Bowman, is it possible, for example, that investors, companies, fund managers, endowments, insurers will say, we're going to bet more and more money, we're going to put real money behind solar, electric vehicles, or what have you, make sure that the technology continues to accelerate, let solar cell prices continue to crash, let battery technology improve dramatically, and somewhere along the way, a byproduct will be that the planet could get saved. Is that a scenario that you're seeing?
It is possible, but I think two things are needed. One is the question of statistics. I want to go back to what the Vice President said. We are always looking at statistics and projecting from the past. I mean, the actuary in insurance, that's his or her business. We need to shift and look more at what big data tells us in a very different way. And there we see, it is foreseeable what will happen. I think having that conscience is extremely important, and also relating it back to people's life. What in your life changes tomorrow if X, Y, Z happens? And I think the second thing is on the investment side. Yes, it's relatively easy. I mean, there's a market today for many investment opportunities, and you have the choice. But today, people do not make the right choices because they don't link this opportunity of climate change to, the nuisance of having a little bit of less return. And I do believe that we need to push, and the public opinion, that's why I like your view about protesting, that needs to really push us. If you look, we were the first one. I was hoping that a week later, I would see another colleague following. What has happened? It took 2 years. And it's sad to see that. And my big question is, how can the public pressure rise when somebody has done something to say, look, why, if these guys are doing it, why can't you do it?
Right. Governor Inslee, on that question of, technology, because that entire West Coast is where a lot of innovation is happening in Washington itself, but also in California, you're seeing companies like Tesla saying that our entire corporate mission is almost to find the technologies that will help accelerate that transition. Do you see technology playing a major role?
Yes, and we believe in technology fundamentally in my state. We invented the first commercial successful jet airliner, Boeing, the 707. We invented the world's best software, Microsoft. We even invented the $4 cup of coffee. We're very innovative in the state of Washington. So we prize technology, but you got to understand it cannot solve this alone, just on a matter of pace. We have to change and decarbonize the world's economy at a pace that cannot wait for the great inventions that might otherwise occur over a century that need to occur over a decade or so. And that's why we have to have public policy to drive investment into these new technological solutions so that the next brilliant person with the next generation of photovoltaic cells can start out of their basement and expand rapidly. And that's why we have a Clean Energy Fund in Washington to do that. So it does require governmental activity. And for those who don't like government, I understand that, but here's the bottom line thing I believe. What we treasure individually, we can only save collectively. And that's the fundamental concept here. And that's why we need some public policy here.
Right. Jennifer, can I get you to weigh in on that, on the technological aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also not willing to bet the planet on technology development. It is enabler, it is a part of it, and we need long, loud, and legal signals. The technology development that happened today didn't just happen. I mentioned Germany before on the coal side. Well, on renewables, the feed-in tariff drove that innovation. China scaled it, right? On an unplanned partnership in a way to drive down those prices. So, and the other piece I want to bring in is local and people and indigenous people and other sectors that technology is not going to solve. No. I mentioned forestry before, but if you look at agriculture, if you look at forestry, it's as big of a polluter as transportation is. And I think often in these climate discussions, we forget that. It's hard, but it's also an area where, you know, supporting indigenous peoples to protect their lands and making sure they keep those lands is also a big part of that solution. And giving people the agency to be engaged and protest and say, we are resisting, and we're not only resisting, we're part of the solution. So help us be part of that solution and make that easy.
Right, Vice President Gore, I'm going to leave it to you to wrap this up, and please do feel free to get passionate.
Just a word on the technology front. I agree with what's been said. It cannot save us by itself. It is a source of hope. It is going to be enormously helpful, but it cannot absolve us from the responsibility to change policy. The new LED light bulbs are amazing, but more important than changing the light bulbs is changing the policies, changing the laws. The world subsidized fossil fuel last year to the tune of $5.3 trillion. In many jurisdictions around the world, the fossil lobbies got legislatures that they have figured out how to influence, and I'll let others connect those dots. Some of